And I welcome Justin Landon, MetroTex's incoming CEO. Justin, thanks for joining us this evening.
Absolutely. Very excited.
Okay,
Coming to you
so
all the way
when
from Lexington, Kentucky right this minute. I'm not quite there yet.
not quite there yet. That's what I was about to say. So we are, I think, what, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks from the
It is less,
official.
yeah, less than 2 weeks. I think we're like 12 or 13 days.
Well, we're super excited. Thank you for taking the opportunity. Hi, baby. That's already my child. That's commenting in the chat. So we're excited. We want you guys to collaborate with us this evening because we wanted you to meet Justin real live in the flesh before he gets here, and we can give him a warm welcome. But first off, Justin, let's kind of start with. Um, you've got some unique ties to Dallas, and this was something that you weren't just necessarily looking for a new position because, in fact, I could probably check my mailbox, and there might even be some suggestive mail of people that are very upset that you were leaving the Bluegrass Association of Realtors. Um, but this was something that was really important to you and your family. So let's kind of talk about that angle first, so people can get to know you personally. Why did you want to come back to Dallas?
Well, yeah, I think it's multi-layered. Little known fact, I was actually born in Texas. I was born in San Antonio many moons ago, although mom and dad didn't love San Antonio in the late 70s, early 80s. And so we didn't live there very long. And I grew up in Southern California. But when I moved to DC after college, I met my wife, Chrissy. And Chrissy is a Dallas native. She lived in Dallas her entire life, and only left when she moved away for college. And ever since we got married 16 years ago, it's sort of been her dream to get us back to the Metroplex. And so she and I had kind of made a pact somewhere along the way that we weren't really looking for new opportunities, except we were always going to keep an open mind for having an opportunity to come to Dallas. And so when the opportunity came forward to put my name in the hat, so to speak, to become MetroTex's new CEO, wasn't even really a decision for us. It was something
Yeah.
that we had already been planned out for many years.
No, that's amazing. Well, look, you already have a fan club. I think this is the most highs and welcomes that we've had in about 2 minutes of being on the air. And I know there's a lot of people that are excited, some of which have already met you and have been able to break bread. You actually came and joined us at the winter meetings in Austin, Texas, here a couple of weeks ago. And I say it's a couple of weeks. It's been like 7, 10 days. I don't know. Everything bleeds together, right? But you got to meet some of our wonderful volunteer leaders, some of our staff, and we knew it was really important for you to also get to meet some of our partners and our members so that when you came here, you did get the real Texas welcome. So we're excited for not only our members, but we've got Anna, who is an amazing AE of the Louisville Association. Yep. Welcome back to Texas, Justin. So you've got a fan club, buddy. I think you've done really good to broker all these relationships, and you're not even here yet.
Well, it's been a sort of a blessing, not only as my wife from Dallas, but obviously before going to Kentucky to serve as their CEO, Bluegrass Realtors and Imagine MLS, I was the vice president of government affairs in San Antonio. And so, going back to Texas Realtors meetings in Austin, Texas, it was sort of like deja vu walking in. Some of the same old crowd that I've known, but also lots of new faces. And it was great to connect with our leadership and some of our past presidents, and get a head start on building that network in Dallas. And really, I just was overwhelmed with the kindness and the support of the group, and really just made me even more excited to hit the ground running on March 4th.
Well, here's what's really exciting. So, we've got Danny Hardiman, who is a great advocate for the leasing and property management space. And Amy Hansen, who is formerly Amy Carnes, was in San Antonio. I don't know if you recall her. So,
of course I do.
Okay. Well, she is chatting in here as well. And actually, Danny next Real Talk show, and they are two of our biggest leasing and property management advocates here in North Texas. So look at that. So more synergy coming to this. So I love that. But let's my gosh, I swear this is the biggest fan club I think I've ever seen on here. So don't get your eyes twisted over here, even though I am as well.
I keep looking over. I saw Kathy. Hey, Kathy, it's nice to see you virtually after seeing each other in Austin.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think everybody's just so excited, and it's 2 weeks away, but it's kind of like Christmas morning. Um, so Francie's amazing. She said, "Look at this turnout! Everyone having an adult beverage." Francie is actually one of our biggest affiliate champions, and is an award winner of Affiliate of the Year, and she has been a great advocate for our leadership program and such. And so, hey, Francie, thanks for tuning in. But let's get down to a little bit more meat, as it's no secret that we've got some challenges going on in our industry. And I think that was a big deal because we have obviously been entrenched in some of the litigation that's going on and other things just from the optic side of what realtors do in the community, the realtor organization, those type of things. And that was really in the forefront of what we were looking at when we were doing the CEO search. I don't want to say we were lucky that we were entrenched in some of these things, but I think it really did kind of change the prism in which we were looking at trying to find that amazing candidate. And Justin, I think that's something that I really want our viewers to know about tonight is that you are multidimensional. And that a big part of that is while you've never been a realtor practitioner yourself, you are no stranger to that side of the business. So let our viewership know a little bit of what that looks like for you and why the realtor industry is kind of endeared to your heart.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm third generation in real estate. Although I've never been licensed, I joke that, I'm the third generation to wear a realtor R on my chest, although I've never been licensed. My grandmother started her real estate brokerage in the 60s while her husband was away at war. She was a dog breeder and needed to figure out how to make more money. And so she opened a real estate brokerage. It was a Better Homes and Gardens franchise. And she grew that business. And my dad, her son-in-law, took that business over in the 90s. And the running joke is I'm the great failure in the family because I've never had a real estate license, right? And in addition to that, my mom's aunt was a realtor, my uncle's a realtor. I mean, we've got kind of throw a rock at a family reunion, you're going to hit a realtor.
Yeah.
And so, I grew up in the business. I mean, I went to my first installation when I was 4 years old. I went to my grandmother's installation as local board president in California. My dad served as board president multiple times for multiple associations in California. Both were federal political coordinators for NAR. And so I've been connected not just to the selling and buying of real estate, but to the actual association work since a very early age. During the Great Recession, or leading into the Great, I guess not, I'm just thinking about my timelines here.
Right.
I guess it was not the Great Recession. It was sort of the recession before the Great Recession. I was my dad had a big bank business. And so I'd run around with my HUD checklists and go out to properties for him and make sure that,
Yeah.
my driver's license, dad put me to work.
Yep.
And so, when I came into the business sort of through the back door, coming out of college, I moved to DC where I served 10 years working for two congressmen. Politics was my passion, but particularly the Appropriations Committee in DC. But in 2003, we both knew, my wife and I looked at each other and said, DC Hill life is not for us anymore. We have two little kids. We need to get a normal life. And so we decided to join the realtor organization and go to San Antonio to be
Hold
there.
Hold on, Justin. I got to stop you real quick. So you went from saying we need the normal life and you joined the realtor organization.
Yeah, no, that's a punchline, right? And so, I always joked, so growing up, I never wanted to be in real estate. I watched my dad, he's on the phone working a deal while I'm at the plate in a baseball game, and there's a lot of funny stories I'll share another time. But, I said, I don't want to do that. I didn't want to live that life. I went into politics and I ended up working a realtor schedule, it seems like, because, my phone's always blowing up nights and weekends, because when are our members busy? Not during working hours, which is fine. But yeah, it gave me a unique perspective, right? I understood the purpose of the MLS. I understood the purpose of the realtor organization. And I believe really strongly in the role that the realtor plays in our community. And so coming from the political world, I was really able to blend both that political background with a really practical understanding of how our members make money every day and how the association fits at that nexus between public policy and, on the street business.
No, that's amazing. And I think that's what obviously we saw in going through this process with you, that you really understood the multi-layered effect of what we do. And I think That right now is really the crux of what we're having to fight right now. Is we know we advocate for the consumer, we know that we advocate for home ownership, but maybe we haven't done a great job of articulating that value proposition all the time, because we get in the trenches, right? And we're sitting there and we're working, we're doing these things, we're putting on our Kevlar and the helmets, but we're forgetting to tell our members and the direct consumers and the public what we're doing on a daily basis. And I think that's something that you and I have talked about a lot is, hey, we don't have to get defensive that people are questioning what we do, for the United States, for the economy, for homeownership and advocacy. We just need to figure out how to articulate that better and how to show everyone what we do. And we're excited because we know you have a lot of exciting ideas how we can be more approachable and bring that really tangible message to the forefront. So, you got a high bar, but you also are the one that set it. So I know
Yeah,
that you're
thanks,
going to be
Ashley.
able. You're no pressure. Hey, here's the deal, though. I didn't make you be my pickleball partner in the pickleball tournament in Austin.
Thank
So
God.
yeah, no, we'll talk about that later. But see, I'm going to give you some wins here and there.
Thank you.
But let's talk about some other things that we know are kind of MetroTech specific. And I think that's the other thing too. Is I heard that was echoing a message when we were going through this process was we got to make sure somebody understands Texas. We have to make sure that people understand what's going on in DFW. And it's exciting. It's not, those aren't bad things. I mean, we are literally the economic driver in the United States next to some of our other counterparts. I think we're the 8th largest GDP in the world. And specifically, DFW and Austin were just named this week the top 2 markets for 2024 in the country. And so there's a lot of things that we're going to get prepared for. But I'd love to hear how that kind of excites you from getting in and kind of digging in and what we can do as an association to really propel our membership and kind of get that message about, inaffordability is a factor. There's a lot of things that are gloom and doom and scary, but there's also an exciting time to be a part of real estate and specifically the DFW market. So what are some things that you're excited about coming into MetroTex's?
Well, I'll say you said it at the beginning. You comment on the fact that we're at the forefront of a lot of things, some of which are not all that you might not naturally say, like, "Oh, I'm excited to be a named party in class action lawsuit."
Yeah.
But the truth is, what's really exciting about MetroTex's and about DFW is, I think, as an organization and as a leader with great volunteer leaders and a great board of directors, is we get to be on the front lines of deciding and helping drive the direction of what real estate in our country will look like over the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years. You talk a little bit a minute ago about the value proposition of the Realtor Association. We don't always do a great job of telling our story. We need to remember that 110 years ago when NAR was founded, the systems on which we rely today, which have empowered homeowners to build wealth through home ownership, did not exist, right? And those institutions don't exist in other countries. And so being in Dallas, being at MetroTex's positions me and us to be at the forefront of ensuring that those institutions remain as strong as they possibly can be, acknowledging that things are going to change, right?
Yes.
And yeah, we've got to do a better job of talking about our value proposition. We've got to do a better job of educating consumers. We also have to acknowledge that things are gonna change.
Yeah.
And gosh, we can look through the history of our industry and point to all the times we thought, Rome was burning, whether it was when the MLS books went away or when sub-agency went away or when, we got rid of buyer beware in the contract. I mean, there's all these times, we went on the internet, the lions on the hill and all those stories. And none of them led to the demise of our industry, right?
No.
Because we had great leaders in place, and I'm really excited to be part of a great group of leaders who are doing that same thing. I think where MetroTex's locally has the greatest opportunity to really make a difference is, at least with its membership, is I'm a huge believer in connecting directly to the businesses that are part of our organization. I see a lot of realtor associations across the country develop programs, develop services in sort of a vacuum. The truth is we need to be in direct dialogue with the businesses that support our organizations, the brokerages. What are their needs? What are the things that we could be doing better? How do we have a direct relationship with the managers and team leaders across the Metroplex and beyond? I mean, we know we've got members all the way to Tyler, right? Like, how do we
Yep.
connect with that broad swath of memberships? You guys have already done a great job with your area realtor meetings and our service centers, but continuing to double down on that and investing in the things our members need and want. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Believe it or not, we can just ask them, and they'll tell us what they want or what they need. I also think, one of the great things about Dallas that I'm excited about, coming from Lexington, Kentucky, where growth is a 4-letter word, right? In Kentucky, we don't necessarily like to grow. There's a lot of protectionism here. I'm excited to come to a marketplace that's excited about growth.
Sure.
And you can just look, and there aren't a lot of hills, so you can actually see it all, depending on where you're standing.
Very flat out here.
You can see a community that's really committed to growing and becoming more than it is today. And I, honestly can't be more excited about being on the front end of that, and continuing to drive that success for the Metroplex.
No, and I think that's amazing. And I think you touched on a lot of things. And anybody right now that's going out there, yes, Christine Burke, you can see all the way to the North Pole. So, we might not be the prettiest area of the country. I mean, you are coming from a very pretty area. But we do have prosperous growth that we can kind of put in our toolkit.
I work for a realtor association. You know what's beautiful to me? Rooftops. I love rooftops.
Well, we've got a lot of different rooftops, and it was really interesting. So even yesterday, obviously there's a lot of growth that's happening north of Dallas proper and DFW proper and everything else. And so even going up to Salina and Prosper and Aubrey and Little Elm, and they all have their different growth patterns in culture that they're kind of growing, but they're all developing. It just might look different for each town and what they want to see with that. And so there are some towns that have a larger appetite for growth in the commercial sector and manufacturing and other things in retail business. But that's what's so neat is you can literally drive 15 minutes and see a completely different element of growth within our Metroplex. And that is exciting because that's opportunity, and it's opportunity for our members. It's opportunity for our members to sell real estate and transact real estate. It's also an opportunity for home ownership. And not just home ownership. I mean, something that we were talking about before. We've got Amy Carnes and Danny Hardiman, and my husband and myself as well. We're very entrenched in the leasing and property management space, and with the inaffordability that's happening on the home ownership side, and some would echo the inaffordability on the rental side. We do have a lot more rental properties that we are transacting here in the Metroplex, and I think that's something else that's becoming a very large portion of what we do as the realtor organization. So kind of touch on that a little bit, some experience that you've had in San Antonio and some other areas and what you're seeing here.
Yeah, I will say that if you look at trends across the country, we all know that home ownership rates are stagnating or declining, right? And there's a host of reasons for that. Student debt, the inability to get a down payment together, some just general inertia against long-term commitment, perhaps. But the truth is, I think we can all acknowledge, and I've said for years when I go out and I talk to brokerages, if you're relying solely on just a sales as your only revenue driver as a company, like you're going to limit yourself in the future. Property management is a growing sector. It's going to continue to grow. And a lot of the things that we're facing potentially on the regulatory side from, changes with the way that real estate works, it could lead to even more, right? People looking to rent instead of buy. None of which is inherently a positive thing, but we should be looking at it from the perspective of that's a growing segment of our members. And so many of the public policy concerns that we're facing as an organization at City Hall, at county courts, or in Austin, gosh, I got to be careful I don't say Frankfurt, in Austin, are very much property management issues, right? And so there's no question in my mind that that's something that we need to be focused on organizationally. It's something that Texas Realtors needs to be focused on organizationally. And, in my experience in San Antonio, and Amy will remember this, having been an active part of our property management community in San Antonio and an active part of NARPM, what I have found historically is that oftentimes property managers are some of the most engaged right?
Yes.
Because the way the business works is just a little bit different, right? It's this regular point of contact. Every 30 days, there's another
Yeah.
transaction, so to speak, with the client. And so I think we need to leverage that community. We need to double down on engaging them and getting them into the MetroTex's family, and then partnering with organizations like NARPM, like the Apartment Association, and tag teaming these things so that we're not just working in a vacuum. Yes, MetroTex's is the largest trade association in the region, but even we can't do it alone. We've got to make sure that we're building partners to help us move these things forward. So yeah, it's an exciting time for property
Well,
management for sure.
Well, and I love that. And so Amy Hansen, I don't know if she is the now president or the incoming president of NARPM nationally. So she's a pretty big deal, which is awesome to have these people within our region. Like you said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We actually have the talent and the minds right at our front doorstep. And I love that. Today we actually had CCIM. We partnered with them for a couple of different things. And, we also had a great forum on retail space and leases on the commercial side. And I heard echoed from so many people today how amazing of just an educational opportunity that was, because as the different opportunities are changing, you have practitioners that maybe were traditionally in a residential space that are looking into different sectors of even commercial, whether it's property management, or selling and transacting commercial spaces. And I think that's really where our opportunity is to continue to educate our members and offer that education, because diversification, I really feel like, is key right now in our industry. You can't stay stagnant, even though we've always said niche is rich, broad is broke. I don't want people to sit there and just dabble. But if we can be on the forefront of educating our members in these different, subsects of real estate, I think that's really also our huge value proposition as MetroTex's. When we're talking about, we have 26,000 plus members. That's a lot of people that we get to educate and be at the forefront of educating the consumer at the same time. That's what excites me. And I think you have that same kind of sentiment.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think as a realtor association, just from a business perspective, historically, the Realtor Association has been so focused on residential sales. It's its primary membership
Yeah.
class. And we all know that there are impacts that will be impacting residential sales, already are, due to lack of inventory. As those membership numbers stagnate, right, or even decline, although I think it's unlikely they'll decline, but stagnate, I think we need to acknowledge that we need to do more to attract commercial brokerage, property management brokerage, farm brokerage, and get them into the membership class and really demonstrate the value and add services that attract that talent to us. Because just from a strictly business perspective, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So we have that same obligation to grow, just like our brokerages, need to grow to succeed.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing is we have to get a little introspective, and it's uncomfortable. And I know as a business owner myself, those are some of the questions that I have to ask. Okay, is this the direction we need to continue to grow? Just because you've invested in this one lane of your business, it's not catastrophic if you decide to pivot. And as the realtor organization is kind of looking through that same lens, I think something that we hear a lot is we don't move as fast as the market or the industry necessarily requires us to do. So let's talk about that for a minute. What does growth look like? How quickly should we be kind of analyzing these different things? And what do you think we can do better? Not as MetroTex's, but just industry-wide, because we all do the same thing. As a realtor organization, what can we do to be more agile?
Yeah, I'll say this for sure. For the last 15 years, and longer than that, but let's just take the last 15 years, since the Great Recession, I would argue that real estate brokerage and being an agent selling day to day, or being a team leader or whatever, your business has had to deal with a rate of change that is accelerated every year, right? You're being asked to change your business practices. You're being asked to change. And the Realtor Association has not necessarily kept up with that, right? For a host of reasons. Some of it because we haven't had to, but part of it is we just take longer to make decisions. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We have committees, we have boards of directors. Like, best case scenario, right? The fastest we could ever possibly move is we can generally make a decision in about 60 days, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we have to recognize that our institutions can't move like institutions anymore.
Yep.
We're steering a big ship. Yes, turning the Titanic takes time. But we have to make sure that we are building structures in place. And I will say, having become very familiar with MetroTex's bylaws and policies and procedures already, like, you're set up to move quickly if you have to. You have
Sure.
that ability. And I think we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of those opportunities when they come forward, that we're not missing out on them. And that culturally, from the most junior staff person to the most senior staff person, to the newest volunteer, to the longest tenured volunteer, that we're all taking the approach that we have to evolve.
Yep.
Staying still, status quo, isn't going to get us where we need to be. And in fact, not only will it not get us where we need to be, because of the conditions that we're facing nationally, whether that's at a regulatory level or in the court system or just in the court of public opinion with our membership, which might be the most
Yep.
important of all of those three things.
Amen.
If we stay status quo, we will lose the faith of the people that we serve every day. Now, changing the status quo means something different to everybody, and I'm not going to sit here today and tell you where we're going because we don't know yet. But we have to
Sure.
acknowledge that we can't sit still.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing. Every day there's a new publication that is being put out, whether it's on social media or Instagram or, somebody talking on YouTube on behalf of our organizations. We also have the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and other things that have gone out. And it's real easy, right? You're like, fantastic. Appreciate you guys. But just as we talked in before we went live, it's frustrating to read it because it is very surface level. There's a lot of clickbait and conjecture without any context that these articles are being written and discussed. But why we've also said where there's strife and angst, there's also opportunity. Instead of continuing to go, and I think the term that I'm seeing time and time again is tone deaf. That we're tone deaf with our messaging, that we're tone deaf with the type of communication we're putting out. We can't control anything else but MetroTex's. 2 weeks, right, for you. We can't control anything but our local, organization right now. But what can we do to continue to be cognizant of that? I know we're all itchy and we want to react and defend. But some of the stuff I told you today, there was a post in a big national forum on Facebook that has a lot of eyeballs on it. And the post was literally, do you think the National Trade Association provides value to your business? And it wasn't, do you think the National Trade Association is valuable? Value to your business is, I think, the thing that we need to kind of bifurcate from all of that. And I think that's something that we get to see. And so I was consuming all the comments, and that's something that I think we have to really look at is we know what we provide. We know what we're doing on a daily basis, but the just traditional like layman value proposition to a realtor member that's not involved. What are your thought processes there? Because we really hone in on advocacy a lot of the time. And do you think that's where we should completely rest our laurels?
Yeah, boy, there is so much in there.
You're welcome.
Let me try to organize my thoughts here a little bit. To start, what I will say is what we suffer from a little bit as an industry is like when I look in the mirror, me personally, I look in the mirror, I see myself differently than others do, right? We all do.
Yep.
And I think at the organized real estate part, the brokerage part, we're looking in the mirror and we're seeing one thing, but everybody else looks at us and sees something different because we see it through our lens. And you've heard the statement that every realtor should have to move every couple of years just to remember how much it sucks. I think it's sort of true in this case too. We are so used to the system that we live in today. The way we cooperate and compensate each other, to the way that the transaction flows, right? All of those things, I think we have to have some perspective, right? We have to understand that other people see it differently than we do. And we have to learn to explain it better, right? And actually take the time to explain it better. I talk a lot about at various times about the National Association of Realtors, and a lot of their marketing talks about the code of ethics. Code of ethics, code of ethics, code of ethics. Like, yes, the code of ethics is incredibly important, but I don't frequently hear the American Medical Association talking about the Hippocratic Oath all the time, or attorneys advertising their code of conduct. Those things exist, but they're not constantly, reminding people of them.
Yeah.
And I think we would do well to teach people more about the business and focus less on just code, acknowledging that the code is incredibly valuable and important. In fact, it's so incredibly valuable and important that it's largely been baked into license law in every state in the country, with the exception of Articles 15, 16, and 17, which talk about how we treat each other, right? I think NAR over the last decade or 2 decades, to some degree through its own power, has amassed a revenue that has allowed them to explore all kinds of different things, whether it's Second Century Ventures, which is their venture capital arm, right, that invested in DocuSign and gleaned $100 million in profits from the IPO on DocuSign, to all of their education that they provide. That I do think at times we've lost sight of what are the core values at the National Association of Realtors. And the one thing that none of us could ever hope to recreate, right, is the advocacy arm. And it is the one thing that by ourselves we cannot do. And it is what NAR has historically done incredibly well. And I don't think it's the only thing we should hang our hat on, because you're absolutely right. It's not something that everybody sees day to day in their business. But it is the thing that we can't recreate. And so I would urge NAR to really focus on that as much as possible, but also figuring out how to connect to the everyday business. And at the end of the day, MetroTex's, the local realtor association, we're like the retail shop, right? We work with our members every day. We're serving their business every day. And when you go to the state association, it's a little more removed. And when you go to the national association, it's a little more removed. And that's what's made the three-way agreement so powerful. And to be frank, why some of the challenges we're facing are a little bit scary, right? Because if the three-way agreement is threatened over the, as a result of the litigation or anything else, the systems and institutions we've relied on for 100 years are going to change. And I think that's a little bit scary. I do want to comment on Kathy's comment here that says,
yeah, that's what I was about to say. We've got past president Kathy Mitchell, and I think her comment or question is to you referencing the other trade associations. So, but do those associations govern themselves like our code of ethics does?
And they absolutely don't. To some degree, the Bar Association with attorneys, they do work with typically the court system to adjudicate complaints that come in, similar to the way our professional standards and grievance processes work. I in no ways mean to minimize the importance of the code. I'm merely talking about from a marketing perspective, because this is something Ashley talks a lot about, is how do we market ourselves? I think we need to think bigger, right? In terms of how we market ourselves. The that's who we are ads are valuable generally, but we've got to do a better job of building our story, and really understanding the piece of fiduciary. There are only 3 kinds of fiduciary under the law. Well, 3.5. Doctors, lawyers, certain kinds of financial advisors, and real estate agents. That's it. Those are the only fiduciaries under the law. And I don't think we talk about that near enough.
We don't. And it's really interesting because just like you kind of had a, backseat, training program, I had the same second generation realtor. My mom got licensed when I was a young teenager, and I kind of had the same experience of being an unlicensed assistant sitting there with a MAPSCO. You're welcome, Kathy. But sitting there with a MAPSCO trying to assist and help where I could. With my mom advocating for home ownership and really pounding the pavement and trying to help people transact real estate and do that from an advocacy standpoint. I am not demonizing how it's changed, but it has changed the person that is naturally getting into the business. My mom got into the business because we had a horrific real estate transaction when we moved to the state of Texas from the East Coast. And for her, it was, hey, I don't want this to happen to anybody else. And if I can get licensed and I can stand in the gap for somebody else and stop them from having to go through this same thing, then you know what, call it a win. And so I think it was a very different reason why a lot of people got into the real estate business, 15, 20, 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago with your grandparents as well. And we have to recognize and not demonize that real estate is also a big market driver in our economy. So therefore, it's very attractive for people to get in it from a sales and economy growth standpoint. And so I think that's probably our biggest hindrance. And I've been licensed for, gosh, I'm closer to 2 decades at this point. So I kind of feel like I'm the hybrid between the two. I understand what we do and how we advocate, but at the same time, it is a very entrepreneurial business now. And I don't think it was entrepreneurial when our relatives necessarily got it. It was in a sense that you created a business and you made money, but an entrepreneur, I think, is a very different thing to date. And I think that's probably where we're losing some ground with a very large core of our membership. And I think that's kind of what you were insinuating of, like the code of ethics. All of these things that we do are so critical. But if we actually poll the average member, do they even know what these things are? And then you could sit there and say that's even a problem. But at the same time, how do we penetrate? How do we get that message across? How do we get them excited to open an email or a text campaign or something else? And how do we trigger that entrepreneurial spirit to say, hey, what you do matters, not just on a scalability, but what you do on an advocacy standpoint. So again, I'm throwing a lot at you.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Talking about the way the industry has changed over the last number of years, and I haven't had an opportunity to meet the majority of our members, so I don't want to make sure I don't want to make anybody too angry. And then the first time
we've got a good mixture. We've got a good mixture. Yeah.
I would just say that the way brokerage works is different. In the days of sub-agents, in the days of only the broker being licensed, right, which is how it used to be, or even before there were no licenses, right? The relationship between the agent and the broker was fundamentally different than it is today. It's why some states have taken on the choice of saying we're just going to be an all broker state, right? Now, people may work together for efficiencies purposes, right, within offices, but everybody's a broker in states like North Carolina. I think Indiana's that way. Because just the way the business works is different, right? The number of agents that are under a broker has changed. And that's led to a disconnect at times between the association, the broker, and the agent. Because despite how we bill, right? We bill the agent, but at the end of the day, the agent's only a member of the association vis-a-vis their broker, right? And the organization was built to serve the broker, who then serves the agent. That was how our organization was built. Now it's evolved differently over time to where we do more direct agent services. But you're right, like things have just evolved differently. And you're right, the entrepreneurial spirit of the member has changed. I would also argue that real estate is one of the last true meritocracies left in America, right? It is an industry. I don't care whether your parent was the biggest producer in the history of producers. If you're not a good agent, you won't keep the business, right?
Yeah.
It is a true meritocracy, and you can be a phenomenal agent with very little post-secondary education. We got members with PhDs, we've got members with GEDs, and it has almost no bearing on how successful they are in the industry. And I think that is amazing. It's what I love. One of the things I love most about our organization. It's like the truest American dream profession you can imagine. But yeah, we've got a lot of independent thinkers within our membership, and we've got to figure out how to connect to them and be relevant to them. And I think what we have to do to connect with those folks is we have to talk directly to them, right? we can't just throw things into the ether and hope people engage. We have to talk directly to them. We have to go to where they are,
Yeah.
and get into their spaces, and not always expect them to be in ours.
Well, and I think that's, I mean, just as you were saying that, go where they are, I went, okay, that's who we are. Now we're going to go to where you are, I mean, and really figure that out. It's not to be corny. It's just, I think again, to use your point, we've been in a vacuum to sit there and allow people to come to us. The same thing. Thanks, Francie. Merit. Yeah, I appreciate that. Spelling that out, meritocracy, because you're absolutely right, Justin. I mean, that's huge. That's huge to remember why we do all of these things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, um, even as an industry, as a realtor, if I would allow my clients to only come to me and just sit at this desk and wait for my phone to ring all day, I would live in a ditch. And this is an active sport. And okay, we're going to get to you, Taylor, in just a second, but this is an active sport, and these are things that we have to proactively do to serve our membership. And I think as an association, we have to do the same. We have to remember that this isn't us being inactive, and allowing our members' needs and complaints and everything coming to us. And Justin, that was one of the things that I will sit there and tout on you is, you spoke very highly about going out in the field, that you would be very little at your desk, and not because you'd be traveling all over the country, but because you'd be pounding the pavement and in brokerage offices and talking to managers and team leaders and brokers. And those were things that I think just resonated so much with us, because you would be the conduit for the association going out there and really figuring out what we needed to do to serve our membership and be an extension of those brokers. So I applaud you for that. And that is a huge reason why you are sitting in the seat right now. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I spoke at 2 brokerages today. I think it's a huge part, that we have to connect with them, and I think as part of my leadership, I think you'll likely also see regular surveys, where we're asking our members for feedback. We're benchmarking our success. I remember during the interview process, someone asked, I think it was Franzana, asked about measuring success. How do we measure success as an organization? It's really hard in an organization with a lot of soft deliverables, right? How do you measure success in advocacy? How do you measure success in education? How do you, I mean, other than saying we had this many classes, or we called this many elected officials, right? I mean, those are just counting stats. How do you measure success? And how do you measure success in customer service? Well, you measure by asking how you're doing, and then measuring that over time, regularly, because ultimately we are as successful organizationally as our members are successful. We are as successful as your business is successful. And yeah, we have different metrics than you all do. You have sales metrics, you have production metrics. But our metric is how good a job you think we're doing. And we've got to measure that over time, and continue to prove that value every day.
So we're going to go to Sherry, who, Justin, this is your first forte into my mother and my business partner. So unfortunately, many brokerages have moved to pushing agents to the association and title companies for education and support. The lines have changed. And as for the code of ethics, if we abide by them, no need to spend so much time marketing to that point. So what say you on that, Justin?
Those are great points. I will say this. I will say this about the code. And if we all lived by it, there would be no need to market it. Sometimes I feel like, as realtors, we apologize for the worst of us, which is a minority of a ton of great agents. There are bad everything, right? There are attorneys that aren't as great. There are doctors that aren't as great. There are CPAs that aren't as great. And we acknowledge that there are different levels of our members. Some, there's a range. It does feel like sometimes we allow our image as realtors to be defined by the least of us. And I think we need to get ourselves out of that mindset. I have a board of director here in Lexington who often says, we need to stop governing for the turkeys and govern for the eagles. We need to start thinking like we're all eagles. We're not all turkeys. And that's where I come from. We need to elevate the best, right?
Yeah.
To the point about, pushing to the association, I think that's an ebb and flow. I think Sherry makes a great point that some brokerages have pushed, hey, let's go to the association for education. Let's go to the association for certain services. I think that ebbs and flows with the market, frankly.
Yep.
Right now, every brokerage in the country is thinking, how do I reduce costs, right? Mm-hmm. In my marketplace, the market was down 13% year over year in terms of units sold, about 11% down in closed volume. So every brokerage in my marketplace, I have to imagine, is figuring out how do I cut 10% of my costs. And I think when that conversation happens is when they might look to the association and say, what can you do to help me right size my business right now? Good or bad, right? And there's always going to be an argument for every service the association provides. How does this compete with brokerage, right? And is it too much? Is it not enough? And our job is to constantly be evaluating that balance to ensure that we're enhancing business, not taking away, not making you less competitive with each other, but enhancing your ability to compete with each other.
Yeah.
And so that's a constant balance. And I'll agree there are different brokerage business models that'll prioritize different things and how they interact with us. But I think as an association, we have to be listening to that balance and constantly going up or down depending on what the market demands.
So you got an amen from Sherry, and I love that from Kathy. So I think you did a very good job on answering all of those things. And so now I'm going to go back to Taylor. And he said, I would like to revisit Kathy's comment on the Hippocratic Oath and how doctors and lawyers govern themselves. The thing with doctors and lawyers is that we pay them based on their knowledge and how they can help us with our problems. I think that what Justin is saying is true. These oaths are in the background, but it's not really the reason we hire them as professionals. We have cut out our real asset, our knowledge and professionalism on how we can solve problems and help our clients accomplish their goals. Well said, Taylor. I think that's amazing.
Let's get Taylor on the show. That was much better than I thought.
Well, and I think that's the point, because we call ourselves, we're undercover agents so many of the times. There's so many things that are going on behind the scenes, and there's shows about this. So I love to watch Law and Order, Criminal Minds, all of these things. And so we get to see those are fake nuances, but the nuances that you see in these different industries and these different professions and all of these other things. And I think we don't do a good enough job. You know what shows we have is on HGTV.
So it's interesting. You talk about like a CSI or an NCIS, which I think make those jobs look harder maybe than they really are. Where all the shows about real estate,
so easy.
Make it so easy. Yeah, it's like, oh, we looked at two houses and they bought it. So yeah, no, I do think there's just a public perception problem, and in some cases we're our own worst enemy. I mean, if I could get rid of every post that says listed in 2 hours and sold, I would happily get rid of those, right? I mean, yes, we acknowledge that sometimes things happen quickly. I have a great friend who's an artist. He's a very successful artist. And I asked him, I said, hey, Jeff, how long does it take you to do one of your paintings? And he says, I don't answer that question. And I said, what do you mean? Like, I'm your friend. How long does it take? He sells paintings for $10, $15, $20,000. And he said, well, this one you're looking at took about 30 seconds. He's a very abstract artist.
Sure.
And he said, it's taken.
So is my child, by the way.
Yes. He's taken my entire career to be this good. And he said, so I hate to talk about how long it takes me, because it only takes me 30 seconds or 15 minutes to make this painting. But it's taken me a career, tens of thousands of hours to be able to do it this way, to conceptualize it. And the same is so true of our industry. We talk so much about speed, and sometimes it works out that way. But we should focus less on that and focus on the incredible value that we've provided to the client, not so much on how quick it was or, how much it sold for, the sorts of things.
It's the story behind that, because stuff is still staying stagnant on the market in DFW, even though we're one of the top markets in the nation. There are houses that are sitting there for 180, 300 days, everything else, because the listing agent and the seller didn't get the home market ready. So if you sold that house so quickly and your competitors in the market are still staying there stagnant, tell the story as to why. How the countless hours of you getting that property market ready and spending 2.5 months and spending the money and spending the time and the due diligence to get that to where it's 2 days on the market besides 200 days on the market. That's what we're not telling. 3 days on the market, call me to list your home. And it's like, okay, great. That's fantastic. All that's telling you is we're resigned to putting a sign in the yard.
Now,
And
yeah.
and
Now I will acknowledge every time I brought this point up to a listing agent that I saw do it, that I'm friendly with, and I'll say, hey, let me, like, what's the mindset behind a post like that? They'll say, like, yeah, you won't believe how many people message me after I post something like that. So I guess it does work in terms of engagement, but I don't think it necessarily paints the picture. To Taylor's point about, we've got to really talk about the services we provide. You can talk about how fast it was, but then maybe talk about how much more work's going to go into it over the next 30, 45, 60, 120 days in this market, where now you've got to find your seller somewhere else to move to, right?
How about this? A plastic surgeon can sit there and talk about the beautiful new nose that they just created, but are they sitting there and telling you about the precursory work and the 3 months of healing and everything else that actually goes into it? There's a lot of work and PT and everything else that might be a bad example, but it's just, it's this salacious marketing lead generation kind of situation that we've gotten accustomed to. And that's why we're here right now. So, but at the same time, we've got to couple the fact that we have to be a marketing driven entrepreneurial business, but still stand on the code of ethics and what we do is the most important thing that builds generational wealth for generations to come. And I think we just have to figure out, how do we bridge the two worlds? Instead, we demonize one and we kind of rely on the other, instead of saying both are true.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we've got Bill Jordan that's actually chimed in, and he's also one of our esteemed past presidents. He said, we fail to focus on the folks that are going above and beyond and spotlight the folks that only contributed to the negative side of the industry. And I think that's when you were talking about us kind of, focusing on the lower denominator. And I think that's what we're hearing a lot of people right now that have been long tenured in our industry is, how do we sit there and really focus, stop giving the grease to the squeaky wheel and the exception, not the rule. Like, how do we change that narrative to sit there and highlight the people that are advocating for homeownership, that are doing the things that Sherry and Taylor and all of our other people that are commenting on here are saying. So, what can we do from a marketing standpoint that you think, Justin, we can kind of focus on?
At a MetroTex's level?
Yeah, sure.
Gosh, I will say this. I'm looking over here at Eric's question in the chat that says, what are some of my goals for MetroTex's? You say, what are our marketing opportunities? What are our goals? I will say this. I think a lot of that is, it's a little premature for me to be guessing or trying to make some assertion.
Sure.
And I'll say this. At the end of the day, our opportunities for marketing and our goals organizationally, I have a few in the back of my head, some of which if I mention them, you all would be like, whoa, what's he biting off? And so we're not ready to have that conversation yet. I would say that what we need to do is listen. And that's your staff, listening to the volunteers, and our volunteers listening to the broader membership. From a local marketing perspective, Chandler. Yeah.
Do you know Chandler by chance?
I don't believe I know Chandler.
Okay, good. All right, there you go.
And I don't believe you. You won't tell anyone. You'll tell everyone. This is real estate.
Exactly.
There's no secrets in real estate. Come on, who are we kidding? from a marketing perspective, I think, we need to tell both an internal and external story.
Yep.
When we talk about marketing, we talk a lot about external marketing. And I'm not going to comment on that because I've got to get in here and I've got to figure out what we're doing now. I have no idea what we're doing now.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee we're not doing near enough internal marketing because nobody is.
Yep.
Nobody is. The Realtor Association has taken its membership for granted. Not that we haven't tried to serve you, we have, but we've sort of taken for granted that members will keep coming because the broker and the agent, and it's all sort of connected. I believe we are entering a time where we have to really focus on member retention. We really have to be talking about our value proposition to our members. We need to be teaching them about what we're doing organizationally. And we can't just rely on, our quote unquote association junkies to carry that message forward for us.
Yeah.
We've got to connect to all 27,000 or 26,000 of our members and get them to understand what we're doing every day on their behalf. At MetroTex's, right? Now, not to say that what Texas Realtors does isn't important, what the National Association of Realtors does isn't important, but to your point about that post in that national group, we're the ones that are connected to our members every day. And if I have a single member in the Metroplex, when they say, "What does MetroTex's do for you?" and they do, right? They go, "I don't know." Like we failed.
Yeah.
And so that if I have one goal that I can guarantee you, it is my goal that makes sure that there is not a single member in the Dallas Metroplex that when asked what MetroTex's does for them, they're going to shrug their shoulders. We've got to tell them.
No, and that's 100%. So Bill Jordan said, "That's interesting, Justin. We've grown so fast that nobody has said anything about retention." And we have. I mean, if you looked at our membership count, especially during, the 2020 to 2022 timeframe and everything else and our membership growth. But in the last decade, I mean, we've doubled in size. Mm-hmm. And that's been great. And that's been a great driver of continuing to be able to provide certain services and a beautiful new building with, a members lounge and different opportunities. But we have stopped to ask what they still need for us as we continue to grow along the way. And I think that's huge. So, all right, Chandler, what did you say? Well, I suppose the fact that you have big goals is a good sign. You exercise discretion as well. Congrats on the new job. Thank you for doing the live stream. Look at that. You're already winning hearts and minds.
It's probably the only time anybody will thank me for not sharing something crazy. But yeah, I think I've been getting that question a lot. Like, what are we going to do? Or what's the first 30 days look like? What's the first 90 days look like? And it's like, look, at the end of the day, the CEO of a realtor association can't do it alone.
No.
We've got a strategic plan. We've got a board of directors. We've got an executive committee that's committed to doing big things. The one thing I can commit to is I'm going to make sure that we have the best customer service. We have the best staff. We have the best run organization internally. The external goals will be a partnership with our volunteers and our staff. I have some ideas about things we can do, but it would be totally irresponsible of me to act like those are the goals of the organization when they're my goals. Because my goals are only part of this. We're in this together. And if anybody ever says this is the staff's job and this is the volunteer's job, I talk about this a lot during our interview process, actually, that we are a symbiotic relationship. The staff and the members is not binary. It's not this or that. We are synergistic together, and we're only going to go as far as we can take each other. And I am super enthused about what a great leadership team we have. Ashley, Johnny, Franzana, Belinda is our immediate past president. All of our past presidents that we've met, which are incredibly important to the culture and the history of the organization. We can't lose touch with those folks. Every member of our board of directors that I've met, they're all aligned in continuing to make MetroTex's the most successful realtor association in the region. And I think to Bill's point, there is still opportunities for growth. Don't get me wrong. We can continue to grow. But there is going to be an increased energy around choosing to not be a realtor in the next year, 5 years, 10 years. I don't know. But I know there's going to be some pressure around that. We have got to make sure that our members understand why being a realtor matters. And I'm really excited to help redefine what it means to where they are.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing is to reignite what we do and to really look at everything we do internally and externally as an organization. I know there's a lot of conjecture on it's not a choice to be a realtor. It's a mandate if you do residential real estate. And I know we've talked about this a lot. The decisions that we're going to make and the pivots that we can potentially make are because we want everybody that's a member of our organization to sit there and say, whether it's a choice or a mandate, it doesn't matter, that we get exponential increase of an ROI in our business by being a part of MetroTex, by being a part of Texas Realtors and NAR. But what we can control is MetroTex. And for somebody to say, regardless if it's a mandate or a choice, I will always be a member of the MetroTex Association of Realtors. And I know, Justin, you've echoed that so much in our conversations, both during the interview process and post. And we are so excited about your tenure of leadership. And I got to tell you, I think we've had the most comments. We might have had a lot of questions. We've had a lot of people sitting here commenting this evening, and I can tell you that's because there's a lot of excitement about you coming to Dallas, bringing your family back home, and we can't be more excited to have you here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited. Everybody in the chat, come by and see me. Maybe not like on March 4th, but in the days after that. I can't wait to meet all of you. And I'm going to do my level best to be able to remember 26,000 names. We're going to see if we can do it.
Okay, challenge accepted. And be on the lookout for your emails, guys, because there's going to be amazing opportunities to meet Justin face to face and to have that one-on-one time to hear what his plans are for your amazing realtor organization. And we're here to serve you. Join us the next time on Real Talk. But for now, Justin, thank you so much for entertaining us this evening and bringing some of your great thought process to what is to come. And we will see you very, very soon.
Thank you, Ashley.